let's start with the 81% of young voters disapprove of Biden over Palestine. And to do that, we got to go to YouTube. So this is a CNN segment we're going to be watching. They're going to talk about the numbers to set the foundation for this segment and all the other subsequent receipts that are going to be coming. So let's go ahead and play this video.
And Priscilla, we're also getting some new polling out today on the 2024 race. Walk us through what this means for the president.
Well, it's still very much a close race. But again, Donald Trump showing in these polls that he continues to hold an advantage over President Joe Biden. Now, according to these numbers that you see there on your screen, 49% of registered voters choose Donald Trump, and then only 43% for Biden. Now, earlier in the year, Biden's numbers were around 45%. So he's still, those numbers are holding steady. And there are issues that are dogging the president and that his team is well aware of. One of them being the handling of Israel's war against Hamas that is unfolding in Gaza. Now, you've seen the protesters that have been happening across campuses. And according to our polling here, there is major disapproval over the president's handling of the Israel-Hamas war, with 71% disapproving. And then two is the economy. And this has been an issue that the White House and the Biden campaign have tried to convey to voters that it is heading in the right direction. But we are still seeing in these numbers that there is still quite a bit of hesitation over whether that's indeed true, with registered voters here only 34% approving of the president's handling of the economy. These are two issues, Jessica, that are going to be front of mind for voters. That is what Democratic strategists anticipate at this point, especially the economy. And so these numbers do not look good for President Biden. And again, this has been a challenge for the Biden campaign. And as the president hits the trail, he has been touching on the economy and trying to, again, show the results of what his administration has done and how it's affecting voters in a positive way. But clearly what these polls show is that there is still a long road ahead for the president. Jessica?
About 6 months until election.
These are terrible, terrible, terrible numbers. And I want to break them down with you. Let's pull the first one up here. So here's the first number. And we're going to get to the why. But first, let's start with the numbers. Choice for president, Donald Trump, 49%, Joe Biden, 43%. And if you look closely along the right side there, the margin of error is 3.8. That means this lead is outside of the margin of error. That effectively means this is an actual win. There is no error saying that this is a close or a tie. No, Trump is winning. He's outside of the margin of error, 6 points. So a clear 2.2 points outside of the margin of error. So at minimum, he's up 2.2%. At minimum. Let's move on to the next part of this here. Then we'll get into some more analysis. So let's bring up the next one. This one. Biden's handling of Israel-Hamas war, or in other words, the genocide that's happening in Gaza. Look at these numbers. Approval, 28%. Disapproval, 71%. And look at that one there. Disapproval from the 18 to 35 is at 81%. 81%. And the thing is, the next age bracket, I think in another segment we'll see it. Yeah, I'll play that other segment. Another segment, we'll see it. Even the next age group. So this is 81%, 18 to 34. Then there's the next age group, 35 to 50. They're at 71%. So it's not like the next age group. So essentially, 50 and under is either 71% or above in disapproval with this Hamas thing, with this genocide in Gaza is a correct way to say it. Margin of error on this one, 3.4. Let's move to the next graphic now. See. Wait, did they show two back to back there? No, that's a different one. Here's another one here. Biden's approval rating on the economy. and inflation. Anytime there's a re-election, in particular for incumbents, re-election for incumbents, economy is pivotal because economy is one of the, as far as is the historical sort of barometer to whether or not an incumbent would get reelected. It's sort of an historical barometer that they've used, and Joe Biden has been sitting at 34, 30%, 29% on the economy as far as an approval rating. And what stands out to me about this number is this is after all the propaganda, all the money. They're spending money. They're raised more money than Donald Trump, like a lot more, but they're going to need a lot more because they are literally, I can't remember the figure. I can't remember the state, so I don't want to quote the number, but let's go to the next number. Inflation, 29%. So these two numbers is a terrible, terrible sign as far as the economy and how people view the economy for an incumbent president. Let's see if there's any other. No. So this is what, now let's get into the interview here. Let's get into the interview right here.
I was senior political analyst and senior editor at The Atlantic, Ron Brownstein. Ron, great to see you. We just heard Priscilla walking us through some of those polling numbers. And just to reiterate for people, 71% of U.S. adults disapprove of Biden's handling of Israel's war against Hamas in Gaza. And you look at that number of those 18 to 34, 81% disapproval rate. Ron, at this point, what kind of political impact could those numbers have for Biden as he's running for re-election?
Yeah, and a majority of Democrats in the polls say they disapprove of his handling. Look, what on its own, we saw in the Harvard IOP poll that concern about the war ranked relatively low among the issues that young people care about most. But it is reinforcing what was already happening, which is that Biden has struggled with younger voters really since his emergence as the Democratic nominee. I mean, he did not do well with them in the 2020 primary. They did rally around him against Trump in the 2020 general election, but his approval among them has been low ever since. And you are seeing, what you are seeing on college campuses. There are, obviously excesses, there are anti-Semitic behavior as part of it, but it is also a genuine reflection of a broad discontent in the Democratic coalition, especially among younger voters, with the extent to which he has basically stood arm in arm with Netanyahu as he has, kind of pursued this strategy on the war. And, you see in the CNN poll, Biden underperforming among young voters. Again, this is not the only reason, but when you start off facing a headwind, it is just another obstacle that he has to get over to get anywhere near what Democrats have gained among these voters in the past.
Yeah, and you mentioned the protests. We've obviously been covering them over the past several weeks as they have grown across the country. What do you think? What kind of impact do you think they're going to have? As I just said, we are still 6 months away from Election Day, and the semesters are set to end soon-ish for a lot of these students. But yet we do see all of these images over and over and over again.
Yeah, I mean, often, when you're the incumbent, you're running not only against your opponent, you're running against events. You're running against what is actually happening. And as Priscilla was saying, the persistence of inflation, the fact that it hasn't gone down, as it continued to decline the way that the Fed was hoping, you can see that reflected in these polling numbers, both nationally and key states, in the discontent about the economy. And similarly, when you have this level of kind of tumult on college campuses, there's a risk for Biden of kind of getting hit on both ends of the swinging door, where the visibility of this discontent, I think, will inflame the concerns among those in the Democratic coalition that are alienated and disappointed in his policy and how far he has gone down the road with Netanyahu. And then conversely, just the sheer disorder presents a risk to him. Republicans believe that one of the problems Biden faces, and really this is kind of the political manifestation of the age issue, is that many voters think he just is being overmatched by events, which is something that can really prove devastating to a president. Go back to Jimmy Carter. And this again becomes one more example of that. So it is a dangerous trend for Biden. He needs this war to calm down so he can begin to try to regain some ground among younger voters. But of course, Netanyahu's incentive is exactly the opposite. I mean, he wants October 7th to be as far in the rearview mirror as possible before he has to face voters. So they are, as on many fronts, I think, operating on very different wavelengths.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I mean, that's a point taken. Their public projection of their viewpoint is opposite. Their public projection. Behind the scenes, it's the same thing. Doesn't matter that Biden is talking about don't be careful and Raffle. You mean you're telling the serial killer to be careful? You're telling the person who killed 30,000 people to be careful? Like, why are we still putting trust in them? But I believe what these numbers are going to reflect more broadly is the Democratic Party losing people for a generation. That's what I think this is going to be a more broader reflection of. Let me see. Is there any other? Yeah, there is another polling point they're going to make here. So I'll continue the video to get to that next polling number.
It showed that 61% of registered voters think that Biden's time in office has been a failure, with only 30.
Look at that number. 61% says Biden's time in office has been a failure. Only 44% say that for Trump. So you got one that's under 50% by 6 points, and you got another that's above 50% by 11 points. Same with success. You have a president that is above the 50% mark, 5%, and then you have a president that is below the 50% mark, 11. So it's on each side. This is not good, especially considering all of the propaganda they've been putting out about ending democracy, about unhinged comments, about him being adjacent to Hitler, all types of stuff they said about Biden, none of which is working. The 91 counts, the hush money, none of this is working. And this is what's really enraging them. They've never seen their propaganda fall to the wayside like this so quickly. They've never seen that.
39% saying success. And then you look at Trump's numbers there, 55% saying his time in office was a success, with 44% saying it was a failure. What do you think's driving these numbers?
Yeah, well, interesting. Terrible. First of all, I mean, the CNN, every poll is different. The CNN poll that's out today is the worst for Biden of the recent polls. I mean, there are 4 other high-quality national polls this week that had the race between even and a +2 for Trump. So this is kind of at the low end of what we are seeing for Biden. But directionally, there are some important consistencies between this poll and the others. And one of them is what you cite, which is that the retrospective assessments of Trump's presidency have been consistently improving. I mean, his job approval in multiple polls now, looking back, is higher than it ever was when he was president. I think the key to that is largely the comparison with Biden on inflation above all, but also on some other issues like immigration. And in many ways, voters are kind of, putting on Trump as a kind of antidote to what they don't like about Biden. The other thing that's really important in the CNN poll is you continue to see this pattern that I wrote about a few weeks ago, as in all of the other national polls, as in the 3 key swing state polls that came out today, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. Biden is largely, somewhat surprisingly, holding his 2020 support among white voters, particularly college-educated white voters, and not even really declining much among the blue-collar white voters who are the core of Trump's coalition. The reason he is down from where he was in 2020 dramatically in the CNN poll is because he is underperforming what he got last time and what Democrats traditionally get among non-white voters. Black voters and Hispanic voters, the CNN poll has him as only +12 among those voters when he was more like +45 in the exit polls in 2020. So that really raises the question, can Trump really sustain those inroads all the way to November, given the way he talks about racially related issues? Can Biden sustain what he has now among white voters, given the discontent about the economy? It's kind of an upside down racial dynamic in 24 that's behind all of these numbers.
He's speaking to a realignment. He's saying it's an upside down, but you're talking about a realignment and post-pandemic era, which we're in, is that realignment. Really, the pandemic is like a line where we crossed, and it's like now we're moving into a different phase of this country. Now let's go to the next part. We're on 80. So let's go to the next part, which is on right. Oh, you're not on Twitter, so I have to go back to Twitter, people. So let's go back to Twitter, and we're going to break down a little bit more of this poll. Actually, instead of going to Twitter, because I was going to go to Twitter and then go bring up the article, but let's just go to the article. I'll skip the Twitter presentation part of that just to get to the point of the article. Now, this article, I believe, is it a CNN? Yeah, CNN article. We're going to be analyzing right now. And here it is. It's CNN because it's their poll. I don't know how to make this go up higher, but you can see it there at the bottom. I think after their advertisement, it'll allow me to kind of, nothing yet. Let's see, come on. Okay, I think I got it now. All right, so now let's read the headline. It says, one second, I'm waiting for it to show on my end. I know you could see it. CNN poll, Trump maintains lead over Biden in 2024 matchup as views on their presidency diverge. Let's read a little bit of it. They do break down the poll a little bit more here, and we're going to read a little bit of that. But first, let's read some of their analysis. We saw the top line numbers from the video. Now let's read some of the analysis. Beyond issues, impressions of both candidates remain mostly negative. 58%, oops, advertisement here. 58% of voters have an unfavorable view of Biden, 5% of voters of Trump. And a narrow majority of voters, 53%, say they are dissatisfied with the candidates they have to choose from in this year's presidential contest. A sizable 17% of registered voters say they have unfavorable views of both Biden and Trump, and in choosing between the two, they break for Trump, 17%. 43% to 30, another pop-up. 43% to 31%, with 25% of that group saying they would vote for someone else, skipping the contest entirely, or just aren't sure who they would support, which all of these is bad for Biden because Biden had the double negatives. That's what they're talking about, people who hate both candidates. Biden had the double negatives. He was winning the double negatives by a lot the last election. That's how he was able to win. In recent polling, he's not winning the double negatives anymore. So that's an issue for a campaign that's literally hanging on a thread for this to be blown out of the water, because this could go from Trump winning to Trump, this is a blowout. Like the numbers could get worse is what I'm saying. The numbers can go from 6 points to 11 points to 12 points to a 15-point lead. And when you add in third party support, it does get wider. And we're going to get to that video in just a second. As you can see, the Vector Index put out the same polling. Gallup poll shows Joe Biden is the least popular U.S. president at this point of his presidency in the past 70 years. So in the past 70 years, including, 70 would include Jimmy Carter. So in the past 70 years, Jimmy Carter used to be that person that was the worst. Now we can say it's Joe Biden. And then Nick goes on to say, Joe Biden is officially the least popular president in the modern era. Congrats to all the progressives who will forever have to explain to people why they voted in one of the most evil and incompetent administrations of all time. Spot on from Nick. This is Inside Politics, the weekend edition with Manu Raju. Let's play it. What?
Good morning. Welcome to Inside Politics Sunday. I'm Manu Raju, and we begin with breaking news. A new CNN national poll released for the first time here on Inside Politics Sunday reveals the challenges President Biden faces as he asks voters for a second term, even as former President Trump has been stuck in a New York courtroom fending off criminal charges and with 3 other criminal cases looming. Our new poll, which was conducted by SSRS, finds Trump is leading Biden, who has ample work to do with his base and with independent voters who are breaking to his GOP rival. In a head-to-head race, 49% of voters say they'd pick Trump for president, compared to 43% for Biden. That's a 9-point Trump advantage with independent voters. And add in third-party candidates, and Trump's lead jumps even more.
This is the part of the poll I wanted to also zero in on here. And that is Trump, 42%. Remember what I said, third-party added, it jumps. When it was just Trump and Biden, it was a 6% difference, 49 to 43. When you add in third party, the 6% goes to 9%. Margin of error on this poll, again, is 3.8, excuse me. But 42% for Trump, 33% for Biden, 16% for Kennedy, 4% for West, and 3% for Stein. This is the first time I've seen West overtake Stein, I think. But now you understand why they're targeting RFK so hardly and so harshly. Now, he is terrible. He's pretty terrible. He's a Zionist and he's, all of these other things. But he's still a threat to them. He's still a threat to the reelection of the Biden administration. So they have a whole team that is their only job is to go at RFK. So I'm curious to see what they're going to be doing in the future, especially after they see a poll like this. There's a 9-point gap. Right? That's not, 9-point gap when you enter in third-party candidates. This means this is a wrap for Joe Biden. But let's listen some more to Manu Raju.
He has 42% to Biden's 33%, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. gets 16% of the vote. Our poll also underscores the challenges of incumbency and that voters 4 years later have a better view of Trump's presidency compared to Biden's. 55% say Trump's time in office was a success, with only 39% saying the same about Biden's presidency. And look at party breakdown, more people are calling Trump's presidency a success than in January of 2021. And that was in the wake of the Capitol attack by a mob of Trump supporters. The number of independents there going up by 7%. Now, Biden's team believes the numbers will change when voters begin to zero in more on the 2 candidates, a contrast he was more than eager to highlight at last night's White House Correspondents' Dinner.
Donald's had a few tough days lately. You might call it stormy weather. What the hell? Trump's so desperate he started reading those Bibles he's selling. Then he got to the first commandment. You shall have no other gods before me. That's when he put it down and said, this book's not for me.
All right, there's a lot to unpack. We've got a great panel to break this all down this morning. CNN's Caitlin Collins, Listed Herndon with the New York Times, and Sabrina Siddiqui with the Wall Street Journal. Good morning. It was a late night for a lot of us. It's glad that you guys are all here.
They're laughing because they all went partying last night at the Correspondents' Dinner. That's why they're all laughing and they had to get up and do some propaganda. And that's what they're doing today. But that's all I needed from that particular segment. Now we're going to go back to Twitter for that article to talk about the why. Now, these are some horrific numbers that Joe Biden is getting. And in particular, with young people, under 50, but really across the board, he has a bad approval rating on Israel. And I think on Israel, on the economy, on an array of things. but I'm going to speak to the crackdown, Biden's crackdown on college campuses. And this is an article from World Socialist website, and the title is Biden's Campus Crackdown, the Democratic Party Bears its Fangs Again. And this is another great article that talks about the crackdown on college campuses should prove to those people who are being cracked down upon, the people, in other words, the students, prove that they need to become post-duopoly voters. They need to remove themselves from the duopoly, from voting blue or red. Now let's listen, or let's read a couple of snippets from this article, and I'm going to read along the side. Between the Democrats and Republicans, there are no differences over principle, only how the program of world domination should be presented and rolled out. It is therefore a matter of pressing urgency for youth protesting the genocide to draw the necessary political conclusion and break once and for all with the Democratic Party and those political forces grouped around it. So this is spot on. Like you must come to, you should, or we want you, we would encourage you to come to the conclusion after seeing this genocide in Gaza and the Biden administration's reaction. We hope you come to the conclusion that the Democratic Party is not an option for you to support. They must consciously turn to the revolutionary force that has both the means and the motivation to end war and the capitalist system that breeds it, the American and international working class. Over the past few years, America's college campuses have been turned into scenes of violence, police attacks on students, young people peacefully demonstrating against the ongoing Israeli genocide in Gaza. In just its 6th month already, one of history's ghastliest crimes have been arrested by the score, perhaps 1,000 in all. Police have been deployed in combat gear and on horseback. Snipers have been arrayed on college buildings. Cops have tased students. At Emory University, professors protecting students have been violently arrested. A police officer detains a protester on the campus of Emory University during an pro-Palestinian demonstration Thursday in Atlanta. Had these scenes taken place in, say, Iran, there would be wall-to-wall coverage in the American media and demands for humanitarian intervention to protect the protesters. Pause there. A lot of the things we're seeing happen on college campuses that we've seen in videos, I think Nick covered it last night. If we saw those things, for example, in Iran, it would be front page news. Look the fuck what's going on. Look at the repression that Iran is doing to protesters who are protesting a genocide. Could you imagine? But this is America. So the media and the politicians denounce the students peacefully protesting against mass murder as anti-Semitic, as anti-Semites. The crude, transparent amalgam is that opposition to Israel's ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians is anti-Semitism. The propaganda and the police crackdown are organized from the Oval Office. Let me say that again. I messed it up. The propaganda and the police crackdown are organized. Said the same thing. From the Oval Office. Asked about the demonstrations at a press conference Monday, Biden said this: I condemn the anti-Semitic protests, end quote. A day earlier, Biden issued a press release stating that anti-Semitism is reprehensible and has no place on college campuses. he announced the creation of a new police bureau to monitor the campuses called by the Orwellian name National Strategy to Counter Anti-Semitism, and promised to put the full force of the federal government behind protecting Jewish community. Biden's alleged concern over anti-Semitism is exposed by the fact that in smashing opposition to Israel's genocide, the White House works hand in glove with actual anti-Semites of the Republican Party, including advocates of the Great Replacement theory, which holds that there is a Jewish plot to eliminate white Christians from America. And Biden has transferred endless billions of dollars worth of killing machines to a government in Ukraine that celebrates as its greatest national hero, Stefan Bandera, whose Ukrainian followers enlisted in Hitler's mass murder of Eastern European Jews. Of course, extraordinary efforts will be made to separate Biden from his own policy to promote the absurd fiction that somehow he can be made to hear the very protests he is trying to crush. Remember he did that? I'm hearing you as he's crushing them. You're hearing them what? Cry out in pain? This is the specialty of organizations such as the Democratic Socialists of America, which in fact only a faction within the Democratic Party. So they're basically saying the DSA is helping to do this whitewashing. But the reality of what the Biden administration is and what is prepared to do to destroy democracy in the name of saving it arises not from what left-hangers on wish to believe about. It emerges from the class interest the Democratic Party actually represent, and indeed from the party entire history. So, this is not far from the DNA of, the history of the Democratic Party to support such repression as this. So this is sort of, run-of-the-mill repression and fascism from the U.S. empire.